Everyone, welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting. It is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016. The board is officially open. I would ask everyone if we could please rise and pledge our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll do a quick review of the agenda this evening. We have a set of meeting minutes to approve, invited guests. We have members of the Library Feasibility Committee here to have a discussion with them. We have the manager's report. Under discussion items, we will be discussing the MS4 permitting process. We'll be discussing the adoption of a possible complete streets policy for Upton. We'll have discussions on a waiver request for some connection fees with respect to Pulte Home and the Upton Ridge project. We have a motion to open the warrant for the fall special town meeting. We plan to hopefully execute an amendment to the conservation restriction for Crosswinds development on Plain Street. We'll be discussing, I should say, a conflict of interest determination with respect to the police chief and him joining an organizations. We have an appointment to consider with respect to a municipal hearing officer. We'll be looking and possibly releasing some executive session minutes that have no bearing or binding to anything that's open. And we will execute the warrant for the 2016 state primary. I do have one item on meeting topic look-aheads with respect to the August 23rd meeting. I'll discuss it at that time. And then just under new business, I just have one small item with respect to 2 Grove Street. But other than that, have I missed anything?
No.
Okay. So with that said, we have meeting minutes to approve, please.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we accept meeting minutes of July 12th as submitted.
Second.
So unanimous action of the board, thank you. Okay, 3.0, invited guests, Library Feasibility Committee. If you'd like just to step forward, please, and if you could just introduce yourself for the record. We all know who you are.
Linda, do you want to scoot your out? Hello, I'm Matthew Bachtold. I'm the library director. And with me is Linda Arthur, who is a member of the Library Feasibility Committee.
Welcome. We have been made aware of a conceptual plan with respect to a proposed location, or one of the proposed locations for the library. And I will turn it over to you for discussions on that, and then I'll open up to the board for questions.
Great, thank you. So I thought I would start with a very quick overview of how we got here. We have a Library Feasibility Committee that has been working for over a year now, and they are charged with finding the best option for getting an improved library facility for the town. And we've identified basically 2 paths that we could take. One path is there is a state grant program that offers significant state funds to help build libraries in the Commonwealth. And if we went that route, we are essentially looking at new construction on a new site. The grant carries some requirements for what needs to be included in the building, what services have to be provided, and there's really no way we could meet those requirements without finding a new site and doing new construction. The other path we could look at is an option that doesn't involve the state grant. That would give us a lot more flexibility. This would cover things like renovating an existing building, there's more flexibility in the size of the building and what would need to be included. At this point, the feasibility committee is focused on the grant option for a couple reasons. One, it is a significant amount of state funds that we could leverage. The other reason is there's a deadline for the grant application coming up in October. So if we want to go for a grant option, we need to have a solid plan in place for October. If we're going to go a different route, we've got lots more time to think about. We have looked at a number of different sites. Some are private sites that were offered for the town to purchase. Some are town-owned municipal sites that we could use, land the town already owns. And the option we are bringing to the board for discussion today is located on Milford Street in front of the Veterans Memorial Playground. And we wanted to get some feedback from you on what your thoughts were initially, and I will let Linda sort of take it from here as a committee member and explain a little bit about what we're looking at and what we're asking the board to consider.
Well, we've looked at a lot of properties, and we haven't found the exact perfect one yet. And this one has come up, and it's an interesting property, the town owns it. And so we thought before we went very far down the path of considering it, we would present it to you and find out if you had any feedback or any feelings about that location. We have a tentative design that would provide the space for a two-story library with 16,000 square feet, and 2 different plans for potential parking. So, let's see, I think you have drawings.
Yes, yes, we do.
That's what we have.
Okay. Okay, let me open up to board members.
As you know, I served on the committee for a number of times, I forget, maybe almost a year, and the frustrations we had with trying to find locations. I was one of the ones that proposed the potential to see if we could relocate the playground and possibly put there. And I still would look at that if there could be a reconfiguration of the playground or something similar to that. My concern is that it's the only parking space we have in the town. And we would be surrendering in one plan down to 22 spaces, which would have to accommodate both the library and the playground. And if you've gone by there on a day when parents are bringing children to the playground, that easily takes 12 or 15 of them at a minimum. The other plan would leave 29 parking. I would not be adverse if there was a way to see if the playground, instead of, to use the term horizontally feed in the back, if it could be more linear and take some more land to re-site that location there. I'm not adverse to using that parking space for the library. I'm more concerned about taking the library and putting that footprint within that parking lot. And believe me, as you well know, I know better than anyone the struggles you've had locating land that is suitable for this type of a facility. So I did some very brief research to look at what's in back of the playground, and the topography doesn't lend itself to anything. But I don't know if there's a way we could either reconfigure the playground or even to the extreme relocate it. Because, candidly, a playground's nice, but the priority to a playground to a library has a differential in my mind. And I think the playground could be relocated to facilitate that. If that were possible, I'd be more amenable to it. At this point, I'm a little concerned about taking municipal parking. It's the last bit of land that we have. We struggle for land ourselves. Should we want to build another facility like COA or something, we have no land. So that's just where I'm at this point. And I'm not adverse to what you're trying to do, it's just maybe reconfigure it.
That's the kind of feedback we wanted to get before we went further down the path.
Thank you. Gary?
When we had our architect draw these plans, we directed him to not touch the playground land. So we were willing to think about taking 10 feet off the side of the playground, something like that, shrinking it a little. That would open up a lot more parking options.
And if maybe the playground could feed to the back more, I don't know. I don't, to the left, to the back, I don't know. I believe it's right on the line to the VFW property, the playground is, so I don't think you can go left, I think you'd have to go back. And it is a very well-used facility as far as the parents and the children in this town. Our friend Mo Capistrand spent many hours putting it together, so.
That's okay. Gary?
No, my biggest concern was the parking too. You go there on a weekend during sporting events and stuff, there's not an empty spot, so.
Yeah, I concur, I think, with the fellow board members. Again, I'm not adverse to putting it there, but I think we just need to do a little bit more homework with respect to how do we not affect, you know, the playground and you know, the parking. And again, I'm kind of, you know, I don't know what I feel right now, actually putting it there, because like, I'm a little selfish and greedy where that, like Selectman Fleming said, that is the only downtown parking, municipal parking that we have, and, you know, downtown. Now granted, I'm not saying we don't, you know, also need a library, but it's, you know, how can we, I guess, share that balance, or like come to that balance where by putting one in is not really affecting another. Just a quick question, the 16,000 square feet, was that the square footage footprint that the state is looking for you to do, or is that the design study that you're going for?
So the state does not require any specific square footage. What the state requires is that you list all the services you think the library should include, which we have done. That's a long document called the building program. And there's numerous guidelines for that. It's not just, these are things we'd love to have. There's some standards and some, you know, this many people, you need this many books, you need this big of a meeting room. So then it's the architect's job to take that list of services and turn it into a floor plan. And we have been focused on a single-story building in all of our other sites except for this one. And for a single-story building, we have a design that came out at 14,750 square feet to accommodate all those services.
Okay.
So when we started thinking about a two-story building, two-story buildings are slightly less efficient because you need more stairways, you need an elevator, you lose a little square footage. So what we asked our architect was for an 8,000 square foot footprint, which would be a 16,000 two-story building. If we go ahead with this and we do some more research, the next step would be to ask the architect to actually draw a floor plan to fit our services into a two-story building. I'm optimistic that he could do that in less than 16,000. I erred on the high side, the committee erred on the high side, so that we knew this footprint would fit. So could that come down to, you know, a 7,000 square foot footprint on 2 stories? Maybe. We have discussed a 3-story building and decided that that's a little extreme for a town of this size. We don't want to get into 3 stories. 2 stories is workable for our size. So the 16,000 is an estimate, but it's a high estimate. If anything, that's going to come down.
With respect to, and I know you've been working diligently on pieces of property, you know, in town, the opportunities that are out there. Do you feel as if we've exhausted a lot of other opportunities? I mean, I know, you know, that there's a property right now, again, I don't know who owns it or the status of it, you know, at the bottom of what I would call Snake Hill, or right across from Mobico, that has been basically stagnant for, you know, many years. Is there an opportunity, you know, to reach out to that developer? You know, that I don't know. I mean, on the other side of the brook on Grove Street, you know,
There's 2 owners that own the parcel.
you know, the Thompson, you know, the Thompson block where the garage is and the house, you know, that area is for sale. Is that, you know, would that potentially be large enough, you know, a site, you know? And I'm thinking, like, with respect to the Grove Street one, I think the utilities do make it, you know, the water sewer does make it to that.
Stops at the bridge.
I thought we extended it over the bridge.
Sewer stops at the bridge,
Okay.
water goes down
Yeah.
to Gasco.
Okay, okay.
So
You know, so there's, again, just,
yeah, we appreciate the ideas. We have done a pretty exhaustive search, and Selectman Fleming can attest because he was involved in some of that.
Yeah.
We have examined, I won't say every town-owned parcel, but most town-owned
Yeah.
parcels. We've done 2 public RFPs to try to get people to offer private sites. We had verbal conversations with both of the landowners you just mentioned, and additionally other people who own parcels in town. Unfortunately, neither of those 2 gentlemen decided to offer a piece of property through the RFP process. We have 2 private sites that were offered through the RFP process that are still being considered. Both of them have challenges, which is why we looked at this 3rd option. but neither of them has been taken out of consideration by the committee. So we do have 2 other private properties
Okay.
and potentially 1 or 2 other town-owned sites that we're still looking at, but
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
Just so I'm set and you understand where I'm coming from, I would be open to possibly looking at a reconfiguration in this location, but a reconfiguration somehow, so you don't eat up as much of the parking space. Right now, it's like 2/3 of that parking lot is gone. If you could get it down to 1/3 or less, it could be more attractive, let me put it that way. Especially if your footprint might shrink a little.
right.
You know, you drop 10 feet off a building, that's a lot. So, okay, that's,
Yeah, I think before you go any further with respect to, trying to design the internal structure, the internal makeup of a building that would hypothetically would be down here, I think it'd be critical to really iron out the site plans and site development, options for this, is not to, again, like my fellow board members said, a lot of things to consider, especially when we only, that's the only one we have downtown, so. But I thank you for your open-mindedness, I thank you for your consideration.
I just wanted to add
Yes.
one thing, I think, to keep in mind, and I know the committee will put some good thought into this, if we end up with a 2-story building, I think we need to understand the staffing costs of that going forward. It is a little different than 1 story, and I know Matthew can talk all day about it, and I can only talk for probably an hour. But I think we should factor that into whatever final decision of what we want to put forward.
I will give recognition to that committee. They worked real hard. We've had some debates that got a little heated at times, but that's a good thing. But you people have worked hard. You deserve some recognition for the time you put in, wherever you are at this point, and you haven't given up, so that's commendable.
Yep, very good.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your
Thank
feedback.
you very much. Okay, under recognition, do you have anything?
No,
Okay, I just have one. I'd like to recognize our Upton Water and DPW department. For the last couple of weeks, we've had somewhat of a string of bad lucks with respect to some water breaks here in town, and they never happen at a convenient time or on a nice cool day. We had one on Maple Ave on Friday, July 15th, and we discovered the issue at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then found the leak at about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, on a beautiful midsummer day, 90, 95-degree day. I did stop in, and I was thrilled to see the turnout. Our DPW director, Vinnie Roy, was there. Scott was there, Dean, Todd, Ed, Matt, Travis, even Steve Lemoyne, from the Grafton Water District was there to assist. It's always reassuring. Again, these type of problems never happen conveniently. They always happen when people already have plans, especially in the middle of the summer. So again, kudos, Vin, to your department and on the great job. I know Maple Ave was just one of them. We had another water break on Main Street, 2 areas on Main Street, one on Milford Street, one on Main Street, one on Milford Street. So again, it was great to see the turnout. Again, I know a lot of wives and families were probably upset that they had to stay and do their job, but they did it, and they did it well. And, I'm sure it affected people's plans and vacations, but thank you for the commitment, and thank you for the professionalism and the job well done.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciation from the Board of Selectmen as well.
So, anyway, so with that said, I will turn it on to the manager's report, please. Blythe.
Thankfully, it's summer and things are a little quieter, so my reports are a little shorter. But a couple things I just want to point out. I always like to publicly thank people for things that they do well, and one of them I'd like to give a shout out to is Bill Taylor and the Green Committee. We had a meeting which I thought was going to be pretty routine to talk about spending the next grant we just got, and I was really pleased to hear our green coordinator tell us that we were the only one of 155 towns who'd gotten their work done in such an expeditious way that we applied for a competitive grant right after getting our first grant. That seems to be quite a mountain to get over, and Bill's been doing it as a volunteer. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for
Absolutely.
that. And we're looking forward to the projects we're about to do, facility controls and police and fire, some more lighting works and weatherization. Those are going to be going very quickly. So that's great. Also, as we talk about things like a possible library in the future, it's capital budget time. We're already into budget, so the usual memos have gone out to the departments to start putting together updates to their plans, anything they need to think about in the future, so the capital budget, Selectmen, Finance Committee can all consider those over the next year as we start to think about the FY18 budget and beyond. So make sure everyone knows about that. I'm excited about our new cable committee that's been formed. They met last week and they've got some great ideas. I think they're going to focus a little bit more in the future about helping educate residents about how they best utilize their cable service, what options they have. It was kind of interesting to hear them talk about the fact that cable TV, if that's the way you're used to getting your channels, is probably going away over time. And there are other ways for people to achieve that. That doesn't help us with cable revenue, which pays for things, so that's, kind of a double-edged sword. But I think they can add a lot of value to helping people get through, how do I make this work for me in a more cost-effective way. So I think you can look forward to some interesting work from them in the coming months. I'll keep tooting the horn for water restrictions. It's great to have a half an inch of water today, but it's still not enough. So thank you to everyone who continues to not water their lawn and be careful about what they use. It's really important to all of us to get through this summer, and hopefully we'll start to have some more rain when it doesn't inconvenience people's summer plans. Thank you.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Very good. Under discussion items, 6.1, discuss joining an appeal of the EPA's MS4 permitting. I will give a brief summary of that, and then I'll turn it over to DPW Roy and the town manager for further explanation if need be. Currently, we are required to fall under the federal guidelines of the EPA's MS4 program, and that is something that's in place. Well, it is the belief that MS4 regulations and program is going to escalate. I don't want to say the word get worse, but the demands are going to be greater. Currently with the MS4, we have to, you have to control literally everything that goes down the stormwater system, from your sand to controlling flowways and anything and everything. And again, this is a federal requirement that's in place now. Spearheaded, I believe, by the town of Worcester. We're looking at the possibility of joining multiple towns and cities with respect to sending a legal document or a letter and an appeal to the EPA to, for lack of a better word, basically ask to just slow down the process a little bit. Let the towns, because again, whatever regulations that they put in place for this, we do believe that they make sense, but it will come at a cost, to the town, especially for the town of Upton. And there are things that, we question, can you honestly control what ends up, in a stream, or a pipe that ends up in an overflow. So that's how I see it in a nutshell. Before I turn it over to DPW Director, I will,
Sure.
Deb, I missed anything?
You haven't. You've given a good overview. So Worcester has reached out to a legal firm. They have agreed to take on the appeal on behalf of all the communities that want to join, and because it's a general permit for the state, whether we join or we don't join, if they are successful in this, all the communities will enjoy that relief. So it's not mandatory that we do. That cost, that legal firm has promised it will not be more than $100,000, but they were looking for towns to sign up. So in your packet is a list And that list has grown much longer because the coalition of Central Massachusetts, which we're in, one of 30 towns, has agreed to join and to use monies it already has from dues all of us have paid to support the appeal with $20,000. So we can join as part of that, and we've already indicated that we think that the town would be, subject to your approval. But also the town can choose to join on its own as the town of Upton. And the way that the group has decided to break those down is by population. Towns that are smaller than 10,000 population would pay $500. So the out-of-pocket cost to Upton, if we want to join on our own, is $500. And you can choose that, or you can choose to say, go with the coalition, which is already putting in money we've already paid. There'll be no further assessment for that. And as you eloquently stated, the goal is to get the EPA to either put off or repeal those stricter standards that would be very difficult for communities to meet.
So if I hear you correctly, Blythe, that if we go with the coalition, that there will not be
Correct.
a cost if we just join, for lack of a better word, the class action
As Upton,
with respect to all the other towns?
if we join just as Upton,
Yeah.
it's $500 that we would pay to this group. If we want to go as just part of the coalition is sending money on all 30 towns' behalf.
Any other comment? We think we covered it?
I was gonna say, I think Blythe covered all of it.
Okay.
We can
And I-
get in real detail if you
No, no,
really
no.
I was gonna say, I can get into detail, but I could be
No, I
here
don't
for an
think
hour
there's any
talking
need-
about this,
I
so,
don't think we can-
and I don't wanna bore anybody with this, so.
Because they need to get that. Selectman Fleming.
I had, and I won't mention the person's name out of respect to them, but I have a personal friendship with somebody that's affiliated with the city of Worcester. And I spoke to them at a length greater than I wanted to. But the reality is, although this makes sense, this could be an albatross, this could get out of control. If the EPA regulates this to the fullest extent, the cost factors could be really prohibitive for a town of our size, let alone a city the size of Worcester. As you know, Worcester's had, well, I won't speak for them, but they've had issues with the sewage in the Blackstone Valley treatment and everything. So they have a great deal of concern about this, but everything that would implicate them would implicate us. The difference is population, that's all. The same laws and effects would apply to us that would apply to them. And as I understand it, we would be foolish not for zero cost to participate in this. So I'm a total advocate of joining into this, with this coalition, with this group.
Gary?
I think we have to do it. I was just looking, in that one report, they said it would cost Franklin $62 million a
Yes,
year.
if you follow they and Bellingham and, what's the
Milford.
third one?
The EPA conducted a study about 5 years ago with
Yeah.
3 towns, Bellingham, Milford, and Franklin.
Franklin.
Franklin's cost alone, they estimated about $26 million to implement all the new required standards. That's one community.
But
That
going
would
down
not
the
be 1
road,
year,
you're-
that would be stretched out over, within a 20-year period or so. But that's what we're looking at. So this appeal, and as I just said, I don't want to get into detail, but we're really just talking about a real narrow legal issue within the new permit.
Right.
And it talks about water quality standards.
But I think it's important that they need to hear from us that we have strong concerns about this. And we're not saying that what they're asking for doesn't make sense, but they need to work with the towns and not produce, for lack of a better word, and I love to use this word, an unfunded mandate.
Right.
Another unfunded mandate that the town is required to do, but yet will not get any assistance to do it.
Right.
So again, I think we'd be foolish not to join the coalition with respect to this. So if there's any other comments? If none, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would motion that the Board of Selectmen vote to accept membership, to vote to apply and become partnership in this coalition with the city of Worcester and the other towns so mentioned in our communication.
I second that.
We show that as unanimous action of the board.
Can I just make sure I'm clear? Are we joining as part of the Central Mass Coalition,
That
or
was
is
my motion.
Upton on our own as well?
I said with the coalition.
Okay, thank you.
With the coalition.
Yep.
Great.
Good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, and coincidentally, the DPW director is still in front of me, with respect to adopting, or possibly come up with a bylaw to adopt the state's complete streets policy for Upton. What I've read and what I've seen in front of us, is what, in 2006, the state adopted the complete streets policy. And currently the state is trying to encourage towns and communities to adopt a policy with respect to the complete streets process. This process, as I see it, would be, again, proposing a potential bylaw that we would identify possibly a couple streets here in Upton where the complete streets process, when we go to rehabbing and working on those streets, may come into play. And when they say complete streets, it would be everything from the yellow line or, the center line, all the way up to the individual's lawn edge. So that would include the curbing and the sidewalks as part of the process. And there is, if we do this, there is possibility for assistance from the state to complete this task. So if I'm not, I'll open up to the board members, Selectman Fleming.
The only question I have is if we participate in this and we accept the streets policy, are we mandated going forward, or is it an elective for us at certain locations? In other words, we'll use example like was cited in this one, Maple Ave sidewalks, makes sense. My street doesn't make sense. I won't name the street, but it doesn't make sense because it's so rural by nature, nobody walks on the side of the street. So do we
It's
have the
elective.
latitude to be elective to this?
Correct.
As long as we're not mandated, because I always get nervous about the mandates that suddenly, we have to.
I agree.
So as long as we're not mandated and it's an optional policy for us, I'm all in.
It is an optional policy. If the town didn't adopt this policy, we would not be eligible for any additional funding, Chapter 90 funding. Having a policy in place would allow us to receive additional funding for future projects such as this.
Right now, there's $50,000 available to help you do a prioritization of the streets that make sense. And then after you've done that, you can apply for $400,000 to implement something. It's yet to be seen whether the state will be able to continue to put funding towards it. I mean, carrot, stick, they want to give us some money to make it happen. If the money dries up, you may not see communities doing much with it, but there's no guarantee in the future, but there's no downside to not doing something.
Yeah, I also read, I don't believe there's an obligation to stay in the program either. After you join, you can change your mind.
You're correct. It's a policy.
What's your thought about, do you have any thoughts about proceeding with this?
I think it's a good idea for the downtown area, some of the roads leading to the schools and stuff, but the more rural areas I have to agree with Mr. Fleming, doesn't make any sense to be putting bike paths and sidewalks and stuff.
I do too.
Again, I concur, as long as we are not locked into, we're not mandated, if we identify a street, we're not mandated to do it that way if funding does not assist us in doing it, or, because it's always been a topic of conversation, I would always love to, when we're doing a street, when we do Pleasant Street, when we do Grove Street, we look at everything from the center line to the curbing, to the sidewalk, and we do everything completely. Unfortunately, our per linear cost to do the street would escalate probably by 2, to do that. So then comes a question, do you do, one street a year and do it completely, or do you do 4 streets a year, to bring up our road standards? So that's always been, a topic of conversation. I am absolutely for developing a policy, and especially if we can, again, if there's a possibility of getting state aid, so we can look at selective streets, like a Pleasant Street, like a Maple Street. So when we do look at that, we can look at it globally.
Right.
We can look at it from center line to boundary line, and look at a total package, especially when we get assistance. So I'm all for developing a bylaw on this.
Point
Yes.
of clarification, where you two both went to school, we agree to adopt a policy. Is it from this point that once we adopt a policy is then written and accepted by this board? Is that where we are?
I would-
Or does it need any town meeting approval?
Doesn't need town meeting approval, it just needs approval from the state, so we would draft one, bring it back to you,
Correct, okay.
explain what it means, send it to the state for approval, and then after that, we can apply for
Got it.
funds to put the prioritization plan in place.
I make a motion that Mr. Roy and Mrs. Robinson develop a policy for the Complete Streets program.
Second.
We'll work on that.
We show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime we have a potential to get free money from the state, I'm all for it.
I'm all for it, too. Thank you.
Great, thank you. 6.3, we've had some great discussions with representatives, especially from Mr. Blue, from Pulte House, with respect to a project that's currently occurring down on Lower Hartford Ave called the Upton Ridge Project. I thank him for his presentation at the last meeting. I think it went very well. And I thank both the town manager, this board, and Mr. Blue, which with respect to what I think is a fair and equitable agreement with respect to this project. So this has been a topic of discussion for the last, I think, 2 meetings. The current agreement is based on that they are building 139 homes up there, and units, I should say, up there, and that we worked with respect to getting 10 affordable housing units in that development. The connection fees will be waived, both water sewer connection fees will be waived on those 10 affordable housing units. And we have, since the development is actually extending the infrastructure to this property, an estimated 3/4 of a mile to a mile, that we've worked with them with respect to, and DPW's worked with them with respect to pump locations, pump designs, certain allowances, and we've come up with an agreement to discount each one of the connections by $1,000. So instead of $12,000 per unit, it will be $10,000 per unit. So that is the gist of the agreement. I will turn it over to my fellow board members for any further discussion.
At the last time Mr. Blute was here, I think we had dialogue, and I think the consensus was we could come to a mutual agreement. I want to commend the town manager on behalf of the board, and you, sir, for the interaction. We've obviously, in a very short time, come to a consensus that's beneficial for all. I think it's a win-win. Obviously, you're in business to make a profit. We're looking for the interests of the taxpayer, and we both want. So I think it's an excellent agreement, and I fully support it.
Gary?
I have to agree with these two gentlemen, and I think it's also, like he said, a win-win. I'm glad we got the extra affordable houses. So, thank you, sir.
Madam Town Manager?
It's been a pleasure. I think we had a very good open discussion and both shared our concerns and I think came to an amicable solution. I don't know if Reed has any other comments he wants to
I
make.
say, Reed, with all these compliments you're getting, I don't know if you need, I don't know if you need to say anything. You could just sit there, you could just sit there and look good, you know.
So, atypical for me.
Well, we do remember the last.
But again, in all honesty, thank you. Thank you very much for your professionalism and for your willing to work with us in many ways, and working with our department heads. And again, I give kudos and credits to you, DPW Director, the Town Manager, in really coming up with what I think is truly a fair and equitable agreement, so thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, thank you all very much. I appreciate your kind words and your cooperation. And, I'll just echo some of the compliments that you've given to town staff. Mr. Roy has been very helpful, and I hope he will continue to be, because we're, frankly, although this is an important agreement, and it helps guide our direction in the planning of the proposed development. We're still very early on in the process, so also the town manager, Ms. Robinson, has been very helpful and made herself available, and I appreciate that. You know, it just kind of facilitates making progress when you know, we can get together and try to hash out details.
Absolutely.
And there have been a lot of variables, and that was something that we had to kind of hash through, and I think we've been able to do that. So we're looking forward to our next meeting, which is coming up with the planning board next week.
Okay.
We had deferred it actually until we were able to meet tonight. I think it's important for the board to know where you all are with this agreement, before we take our next step with the planning board, and then obviously with parallel with the Conservation Commission. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and we'll be working very closely with town staff and others on the boards to move forward. But again, I thank you and I appreciate your cooperation and working out this initial agreement.
Great, thank you. Motion to accept the agreement?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read the entire motion. It'd be lengthy, but I think for public record it should be. You agreement?
I have no problem.
Okay, I would like to motion that the board enter an agreement with Pulte Homes and accept the following conditions. Pulte Homes will pay the town of Upton a total of $10,000 for every unit of housing built in this project, with the exception of affordable units. $7,000 per unit will be paid for sewer connection fees and $3,000 for water connection fees. The fees for each unit will be payable to the town immediately following a completed sale for each housing unit. Pulte Homes will construct 10 units of affordable housing. As part of this arrangement, the town will waive the water and sewer connection fees for all of these units, which is a total of $120,000. Pulte Homes will extend and construct the sewer main from the development on Hartford Ave South to the town's existing system at Hartford Avenue South and Railroad Avenue, the final design of which is subject to approval by the town's consulting engineers and director of public works. The extension of the system will become the property of the town of Upton. This system will essentially consist of completing the gravity sewer line already installed in Hartford Avenue South, installation of gravity line from where it currently ends to approximately Glen Avenue, construction of a sewer lift station at that intersection, and installation of sewer force main from the lift station to Railroad Avenue as proposed by Pulte Homes in April and May 2016. The town makes no representations about the condition of existing dry main in the Hartford Avenue South and will require Pulte Homes to take whatever measures necessary to complete the system extension to the town's satisfaction. Pulte Homes will also extend water service from the town's existing system on Hartford Avenue South at approximately Rockdale Hill Circle to the Upton Ridge development, the final design of which is subject to approval by the town's consulting engineers and director of public works. The system will essentially consist utilizing the dry pipe installed in Hartford Avenue South and the construction of a water booster pump station as proposed by Pulte Homes in April and May 2016. The town makes no representations about the conditions of the existing dry main in Hartford Avenue South and will require Pulte Homes to take whatever measures necessary to complete the system extension to the town's satisfaction. The booster pump station will be of sufficient capacity to serve the homes constructed in this development. The intent is also that the town will provide an easement in the right-of-way of Hartford Avenue South in order to construct a station below ground, and this station owned and maintained by the Upton Ridge Homeowners Association. The town and the association will execute a separate agreement that outlines the maintenance of the station and access to the facility by the town in cases of emergency.
I'll second all that.
Please show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
What, you don't get this?
You stretching or?
No.
I remember 15 years ago. Do you? Oh, I'm sure.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
That's
very
great.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, that was an unexpected pleasure.
Wow.
Thank you all.
Sometimes we're nice.
Thanks.
Okay, under 6.4, motion to open a warrant for the fall special town meeting. I have been informed that the Nipmuc Auditorium is available the week of November 14th, so the day we're looking for the special town meeting will be Tuesday, November 15th. So, if there's no other discussions or concerns with that, then I would entertain a motion to open that warrant for the fall special town
Make
meeting.
it on minutes. You got-
Can we make a motion to?
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we open up the town warrant for the date of, the November 15th.
Do we want a date to close the warrant?
We usually close it at the end of September, I'd say the last Friday
Okay,
of
with
that
the-
month.
With the closing date, the last Friday of September 2016.
Second.
Please show that unanimous action of the board. Oh, no problem, thank you. Okay, 6.5, with respect to amending the conservation restriction with respect to the Crosswinds development on Plain Street. It is, in discussions that I've had with the town managers, to the best of my knowledge, that when this development first came to the thought process many, many, many years ago, that a conservation restriction was developed at that time, which identified small pieces of property, basically little postage stamp pieces of property between each one of the houses there now, and identified those pieces of land to have a conservation restriction. Well, the Conservation Commission, again, took another look at that and saw that it really didn't make sense to do it that way. So they brought an amendment to the conservation restriction for that property, which identified, took those small pieces of land between the properties and identified two larger pieces of land that will not have a direct impact, as far as I would see, to the homeowners on that development, and identified that those pieces of land have a conservation restriction. The maps are included in our packet with respect to that, and as you'll see in our packet, that the conservation restriction, that the Conservation Commission has already reviewed this and signed off on it, and is looking for us to approve this amendment to the conservation restriction. Did I miss anything?
Not at all.
Okay, so with that, any other discussion? Bob?
No, no.
Okay, Gary?
I think we're just moving one spot to another spot.
Yeah, we're basically, again, it wouldn't have been fair, I think, to the homeowners on that,
Yeah.
in that development to do the initial design. So I think this is a much better design that would appease a lot of people. So with that said, I want to entertain a motion to
Chairman, I
accept.
motion that the board vote to execute the restriction on the conservation, restriction on Crosswinds development as submitted.
Second.
Please show that unanimous action of the board, and thank you to the Conservation Commission for their open-mindedness and their working with this, so thank you.
We'll sign that at the end of the meeting.
Okay, 6.6, we have a conflict of interest determination. The police chief has been requested to be part of the Mass Police Accreditation Commission Board, and where we are a station, our current police station and it is accredited by this board, that may show some conflict of interest with him being on this commission. It is up to this board to make that determination with respect to that, and once we have done so, we will send a letter to the appropriate authorities with our position. So I would open it up to the board members. Bob?
It makes a lot of sense. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the chief on being selected for this position. It's a prestigious position, and certainly I would never stand in the way. I don't see any real conflict of interest whatsoever. The dollars amount trivial at best.
I don't see any conflict of interest either.
Yep. And I guess, I think it would just be common sense, and again, I can congratulate the chief that he has been recruited and requested to be on this committee. We always joke that, was he absent during that meeting, that, he got appointed. But again, this is a great honor, and it just shows the caliber in which he is, in which the amount of respect that our police department has with respect to the state. So I think common sense would just say that any discussions with respect to the town of Upton on this board, that he recuse himself on those discussions and document it so accordingly in the minutes that he will recuse any discussions with the town of Upton. But I don't see any issue with this. So if I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would motion that the board approve and provide written conflict of interest determination to Chief Bradley pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 19, the so-called conflict of interest statute.
Second?
Please show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you very, very much. And congratulations, Chief. Okay, under 6.7, motion to for annual appointments, we had discussions, I think, the last couple meetings with respect to municipal hearing officer. It is a position that we're required to have here in town. That's currently, we do not have one. We've not had one for the last few months. There are two individuals that have come forward with respect to holding this position in town. One is a gentleman from 95 Main Street. He showed interest. He's more than qualified to do this. However, you know, we would need to send him to training. This position does require mandatory training to hold this position, and so he would need to be trained. The other is we actually, like I like to see done, we reached out to other towns to see if we could share services. Unfortunately, there's no savings in this because we are mandated to pay the rate accordingly to this. But the town of Mendon, the assistant treasurer collector, currently in the town of Mendon, is doing the work in Mendon. She is trained and has the classes and the training to do so, and she is willing to also do the services here for the town of Upton. The application and her resume is in our folder. So with that said, I would open it up to the board for discussions. Bob?
Mr. Chairman, I think you said it well. With all due respect, to Mr. Neufeld, certainly he has experience. The dilemma we have is not having the qualifications at this time, where we do have the opportunity to partner with our sister town of Mendon, and there is an individual there that's fully qualified, has had all the training, and has experience within that field. It's, how do I say it more candidly, it's one of those things that you don't need them till you need them, but it's, how many hearings do we have a year? But I think it's important that we have somebody that's trained, and this individual from Mendon fits that qualification. So I would favor Mrs. Jennifer Welch as the candidate.
Yep, I have to agree with Mr. Fleming. We asked her last week to fill the application. She turned everything in. And looks good.
Very good. So can we make a motion?
I make a motion, we appoint Jennifer Welch to the municipal hearing committee or officer. What do you guys want to call it?
Second that motion.
Please show that unanimous action of the board, and again, even though there's no savings, it's always good to share within the town and have shared services within the town. We'd love to have the savings go with it, but.
And if Mr. Neufeld has any interest, there's
Oh,
plenty of
absolutely.
opportunity. We'd love to have him.
Absolutely. Okay, 6.8, as we're mandated, required to do every year by bylaw, we look at releasing certain executive session meeting minutes publicly. When we approve the meeting minutes, executive session meeting minutes here at this committee, they are held for many reasons. Again, it's what is mandated and required by executive session. And then once a year, we look at the list and see what executive session minutes could be released that will not have an impact in either negotiations, legal arguments, or anything that may be open or still pending with respect to the position of the town. In front of us, we have the Excel spreadsheet, and the oldest executive session meeting minutes we have is line item number 92, which, in speaking with the town manager, I think we believe that that's still possibly an open item.
It is possibly, and I didn't want to call the chief on vacation to ask him.
Okay.
So I would suggest we hold it just in case. I think it's closed, but I want to be sure.
Okay. the next, as I see it, the next one is line item number 135. And in further review of that, I would, speaking with the town manager, I think that we could possibly close, or, excuse me, we could release, thank you, trying to find the right word, release those meeting minutes without any impact, so that would be potentially added to the list. That'd be line item 135. Then we come down, related to the Upton Development Group. Yep. Line item number 149, relative to, it's identified as Harvey Trask. I believe that that could also, again, in speaking with the town manager, I think that that also could be released.
It's the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
Yep, so that would, we would add that to the list. And item number 151, identified as Tater and Howard. I think that that also, in speaking with the town manager, could potentially be released. And then you will see the shaded items under 157, 158, and 159, identified as COA van driver, that those are recommended to be released.
Excuse me.
Yes.
152?
Is that recommended, 157 to 159?
157, yeah,
That is finally been settled, as I
Yes.
recall,
yeah.
right?
Yes, that's why I'm
About
recommending it.
152?
That is recommended to still stay
Close, okay.
hold, still a hold.
It includes union negotiations, so that's, if it was split, I would say release part of it, is my suggestion.
The next, what's classified as non-active executive session meeting minutes, we go down to 170 and 170A to discuss financial assistance to a resident in need, that those two would be recommended to be released. And then the only other, the last one that would be recommended for release would be line item number 182, to discuss the value of real estate with respect to East Street, that would be, again, a non-active, still a non-active item and recommended to be released. So, I will open it up for discussions, and if we don't have any, then what I will do is I'll read those again, and somewhat as we do like with the consent calendar, if you have any issues to hold them, otherwise we will just do we'll identify the dates, the line item, and we will release accordingly. So, Selectman Fleming, any discussion?
No, if you're gonna roll call, then we could do it that way.
Okay,
All right, roll them.
any discussion before
No, I'm just gonna take your advice, this is all prior to maybe on the board, so.
Okay, so, the motion will be to release, executive session line item number 135, Upton Development Group. 149, titled Harvey Trask. 151, titled Tater and Howard. Line item number 157, titled COA van driver. Line item 158, titled COA van driver. Line item 159, titled COA van driver. Line item number 170, with respect to financial assistance to a resident in need. 170A, discussion of financial assistance to a resident in need. And 181, with respect to collective, no, excuse me, 182, not 181, 182, with respect to real estate values on East Street. So those are recommended for release. Motion's been made.
Mr. Chairman, other than those motion to be held, I would motion that we approve release of all the executive session minutes, meetings as submitted as of this date, August 2nd, 2016.
Second that motion.
Please show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you. Okay, Item number 6.9, execute the warrant for the state primary. I see in front of us that, I'll get the date, on Thursday, the 8th of September, 2016, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Nipmunk Regional High School Gymnasium. Individuals will be asked to cast their vote in the state primaries for candidates and political parties for the following officers, which is representative in Congress, counselor, senator in general court, representative in general court, and sheriff. So, I believe we need a motion to execute, or do we need, yes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I motion that the board execute the election warrant for September 8th, 2016 as submitted. Primary warrant.
Second.
Please show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you. Have I missed anything with respect to discussion items?
No, sir.
Okay. Under 7.0 meeting topic, look ahead, I just would like to remind the board that our next meeting is August 23rd. At that time, we are scheduled to meet with the CMRPC, the ZBA, and the planning board with respect to discussing the proposed village bylaw in the town of Upton. I would ask that we start that night, we will post and start that night at 5:30, if that's okay with everybody, so we can, the town manager and I will manage the agenda accordingly, so we will be done by 6:30, so we can go right into our multi-meeting with the CMRPC, the zoning board of appeals, and the planning board with that, so.
We also have a common vic license transfer for Rebecca's wanting to move from her current location to that.
Yep.
That will take up at 5:35, and it can, of course, be contingent upon the planning board's meeting with her later that night.
Okay. And the only other item I have, is there any other meeting topic look-aheads that I may have missed? Okay. The only other thing I have for new business is the town manager gave me yesterday when I met with her a proposed plan with respect to a parking lot design on 2 Grove Street when we remove that building from its property, and we propose currently it's proposed to be a 15-spot parking design in there. I've asked the town manager to scan it, and please send it to both of you for your reviews, and please reply back to her with any comments that you may have, and we'll address those comments if needed accordingly, but if none, then she will present it to the Conservation Commission as well as the Planning Board for their review. So expect to see it, I would guess, tomorrow.
The reason I asked Jim to bring it up is that it's a couple less spaces than we hope to get out of it when we put the legal size in. And if we can wait till the meeting on the 23rd if you want to vote on an actual plan. That will just delay a little bit us getting through planning board and conservation. The goal was to get it done this fall. So that's fine if you'd like to do that, it's no problem. If you're comfortable with it, you just want to share your concerns and I can share them with the engineer, we can try to move it along a little faster, but whatever the board's pleasure.
And again, there are parking spots within the existing building footprint that I missed. So if you see the little lines within the building, those are parking spots, but I did miss them. But again, at first glance, I did like this design because it showed some nice little greenery to accommodate this. So, but again, look for it and just comment back accordingly. If you have any comments with that, all right?
Yeah. Do we have a date for the building to be torn down yet?
No, they were in the building last Friday doing the pre-demolition survey. There's a couple of state mandate reporting time periods they have to make. I'm hopeful by the end of the month, but they had 60 days from July 20th? I don't remember the date we put on that, Sandy. Hoping for the end of August.
Thank you.
Very good, that's all I have. Anything else?
No, sir.
Anything else? Anything? All right. I open it up to the audience. Any questions?
Stand on the mountain.
How'd I do? Did I do okay?
Yeah. Looks thrilled.
Thank you,
Still awake.
thank you. Okay, with that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:04.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Please show that as unanimous action of the board. Thank you. Have a safe summer, what's left of it.
Hey, you're in a month.
I know.